Welcome to another divergent episode of Two Mics with Two Mics. I'm Pastor Michael, and I have a microphone. And with me today is none other than Goose, straight from Top Gun. Goose?
Yes, and I am Pastor Mike, and I am not called Goose.
It's
And
Rooster.
Maybe Penguin,
Maverick?
and I have a microphone.
I say that because he's wearing tags from loved ones, dog tags, and he also has his.
From my two
Is that
sons.
Tommy Bahama? Is that actually?
This is a Tommy
Wow.
Bahama, actually.
Wow, we're going classy here.
Tommy
Summer
Bahama.
mindset, baby.
Summer, hair's growing out.
Some
Hallelujah.
summer arm hairs are growing out. That's for me.
So today,
Yes,
and
what
we
are talking
touched on this topic a year ago. I think it actually was summer, but we want to get into more in-depth detail. And so the title, which I stole from Ed Young Jr. about a decade ago,
Well, then you're tagging him right now
I am
verbally,
tagging
so
him
it's
verbally,
fine.
which
yes.
is good. Right,
Yes.
I'm giving him the credit for this title. Is called Defective Decisions Dumb Daters Make. I've known some dumb daters in my time. In fact, I, believe it or not, at one time was a dumb dater myself, although all that was BC,
Which we will talk
before
about
COVID.
some BC.
before Christ.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And before COVID for
But
some.
mostly we want to talk about dating and maybe even get into marriage from the Christian perspective, because, but we will touch on the non-Christian, but typically we don't want to stay too much on the non-Christian because most of the dudes, which we are dudes, most of the dudes that don't know Christ, when they look to date, I said most, not all, when they look to date a woman, their focus is not in her eyes, it's on the rest of her body. You wanna
So
add
let's
to
get
that?
into that.
Yes.
Do you want to add to that? The body. It's pleasing. No. Well, actually, if you look at artwork, yeah, the female body is definitely more pleasing than the man's. The man's is very utilitarian. It's for getting around.
And if you're a
for
dude-
females, it's pleasing to the eye. It is curvaceous and is desirable to the male.
To the male, yes.
Which I still do not understand how one can desire one's own sex because it's just kind of gross.
Oh, it is gross.
I
was
thought
gonna-
that before I was a Christian. I
was
said,
gonna
hey, I have
mention
no
that.
problem. I wasn't a homophobe or anything like that. I'm going to say it because we're talking about dating.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the BC. There's a lot of BC people out there before Christ that were attracted to the same sex. And even when I was not a Christian, not living by the Lord's commandments, standard, precepts, all that, I still thought it was gross. I don't understand it. I didn't understand it then. And I understand now that it's sin, but I didn't understand it then. I had no problem. I said, "You want to do that?" My best friend was bisexual. One of my other best friends was gay, and I said, "You want to do that? You go ahead, but I don't want to hear about it because that grosses me out."
Called bisexual switch hitters.
All the teams, every other
Switch
of
hitters.
the teams. Anyway,
So it reminds me of, let me get into something before
go
we
ahead.
leave the track about being attracted to the same sex. So my friend who's in heaven now, God rest his soul, and trust me, it is resting, Jed Smock. Jed Smock, a campus preacher, been in preached on college campuses, all 50 states and some other countries. Jed would say, remember, he's a former college professor of United States history.
hippie college professor.
Well, he was
correct.
he was a college
New agey.
professor. Dropped out of his teaching career, went to California because back in the day it was "Go West, young man, go west."
That was a
And
great
he
song
said,
by
"I
Michael
dropped
W.
out,
Smith back in the
tuned
day.
in and turned on, and he ended up in the beaches of Morocco, North Africa, totally naked, omen on a beach.
He wasn't a hippie at all. Not at all.
Yeah, yes, he was. That's the point I'm trying to make.
That's my sarcasm. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
That's extreme hippie is what I'm saying. Most people go to California and smoke weed and get into the hippie movement, not go to Morocco, get naked on a beach. So
he
go
went
ahead.
from California to Morocco, found a couple of 100 American dropouts, he said, on a beach, and joined in. And he said pretty soon he was sitting on that beach in lotus position with his hands oming. He said, this was to give me peace of mind. He said, but it didn't do anything. And said one day he's on that beach, and he said an Arab came walking down that beach carrying a cross, planted it in the sand, and preached Jesus to those 200 dropouts. And he didn't get saved, but he said He said, and I thought, Jesus, could it be that he really is the way, just as my mother had told me when I was but a boy? Anyway, he sent off to his parents and got a Gideon New Testament, began reading that, came back to the States, and under an Assembly of God preacher named Clyde in, yes, a man, not a horse, in Missouri, he got saved at the Burger King. Jed says, at the Burger King, I met the King of Kings. He became a campus preacher. But he would say, all that to say what he would say.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Bring it back here. Bring it back.
All that.
We're in Morocco right now.
Reel
yes.
that in. He said, I failed to see, I'll try to imitate his voice because he had a unique voice, but I'll never be able to do it justice. He goes, I fail to see the attraction that one man's anus has to another man. He said, I find it rather dirty.
He was very prone to theatrics to pull in a college crowd, and actually they were very successful in pulling in college crowds because of their theatrics and antics and all that stuff. So, yes, but to go back to the dating arena, we're going to talk a little bit about the before time, the before Christ time.
BC.
Because the dating arena, I've said this multiple times to multiple people, adults, youth, all over the place. I do not wish the dating pool upon anybody in this day and age. The way that you dated, how would you get a date? How would that look in the 60s?
No, 70s. I didn't date when I was 10.
When was your first kiss?
No, that came later.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was a little heathen whore.
I wasn't a little deviant like you were.
Yeah.
I was a deviant.
My first kiss was at like
There's
7
always
or 8
someone
years
worse
old.
than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, always
It was
someone-
bad. It was bad.
It was bad.
It was just a kiss. It was with bikes behind bushes at the neighborhood. I was 7 or 8. Yes.
Troubled child.
I wanted it very young. Anyway, so how'd that look in, the 1800s, as you like to put it?
The 1800s.
How'd dating look? What'd you do?
Well, I did kind of like, back then, before Christ, I did kind of like Ed Young Jr. and his message on defective decisions dumb daters make. And he had a car actually on the pulpit, on his pulpit. And he said, many times when you're BC, before Christ, you focus on the features. He compared it to like buying a car, where you focus on the features of the car rather than, on, I don't even know how I could word this. Anyway, you focus on the features of the car. Like you'll say, whoa, look at those headlights. And man, what a nice trunk. And he says, and you get so wrapped up in that, and that becomes your focal point. So your dating now is typically not so much, I'd like to get to know this person to see if this is the person I want to marry and spend the rest of my life with. Let's just face it, when you're a little heathen devil and you go into the dating arena, you're mostly looking.
Go ahead.
You're mostly looking, as we said back in the day, put a notch on the belt. You're looking to score. Go ahead.
Though that's all valid, and I'd love to know the analogy with the wheels. Are those feet and hands? Though that's all valid.
That I don't remember.
How did you, going back to my question.
Well, you asked.
No, what I asked is, how did you date? You're giving me the criteria of how you dated.
Well, we did the
obviously,
old,
how's the upstairs and downstairs
we
look?
did the old male.
Did you ask him for a malt? What'd you do?
The male dating call. In the animal kingdom, they have a.
So you just went out there and went like this?
No,
Did you roar?
The male.
Did you puff out your chest like gorillas? What'd you do?
The human male dating call is, "Hey, baby."
Tell me about a date that you got doing that.
None.
Okay, so then the dates that you did get, how'd you get them? What would you do?
Actually, I'll just tell you the one with my wife, how I got my wife.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm in a little town out in western Nebraska, about 1,200 population. My wife was on a farm 5 miles outside of another town 15 miles away. So she was a farm girl. And I was a city boy of 1,200 people.
That is a big city.
Big city. So it's in the summer, right before our junior year. We're both same age, pretty much. She's a month and a half older, but I never hold it against her much. So I'm in town, Dragon, Maine. Watch a movie, American Graffiti. You'll know what Dragon, Maine is. I'm in town, Dragon, Maine. And over the hill, coming down into the city, the little town I grew up in, is a red 67 GTO with over-under headlights. Talking about the real
We're talking about actual cars now.
actual cars. Yes.
Actual cars.
Yes. Anyway.
Again, I'd love to know how that analogy pans out
so,
for females, but
well,
go ahead.
forget it. It was just ask Ed Young. And so obviously the first thing I see is the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see an underclassman driving this car, and I knew it wasn't his car. And I'm thinking, what is this punk doing driving this car? And then I look at the passenger seat, and there is one of the most, if in my opinion, the most beautiful woman I laid eyes on, a blonde-haired cutie. And I go, who's that? So I flash him with the car lights.
There you go. There you go. But the
Which
analogy
means-
now, you must clarify
which means
with everything
go around
you're
the
saying.
block as I go around the block. And anyway, I pull up behind him. I get out. I go over to the passenger side of the car where my now wife is of this August will be 52 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I acknowledged the other guy. His name was Roger. I said, hey, Roger. And that was it. And then I said, hey, who are you? I said, my name's Mike. And it was all over.
How'd you get a date with her?
I asked her,
How?
would you like to go out sometime?
Right there? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can't
I'm getting
remember.
to how did you actually get there?
I think I asked her right there.
Right there.
In fact, what I asked her was right there was, hey, you want to come ride with me for a while? And she said yes.
Okay, so she came into your car and you guys rode
she
around?
left her, that was her brother's car, who was in the military, in the Marines. She left Roger with his car, and then she got in my car.
And
we
so
drove
you guys
around
just
for a while
and talked and
yeah,
all right.
just talked and
Okay, so that was the first
got her
first date.
phone
You
number.
would qualify that as a first date. This is non-Christian
I would-
dating, which is we're just
since
talking
I'm a
here.
Star Trek fan, since I'm a Trekkie, I would call that a first contact.
Okay, so what was the second date?
I don't remember.
Hmm.
You're talking 54 years
Hey,
ago.
that's hey. You know what?
Been married
No, I get it,
52,
but we're
known each
talking
other
about
54.
dating before Christ, and so I'm kind of curious how it was then. I can tell you from my personal
Yeah,
experience.
let's hear yours.
Oh, I got plenty. I had
Let's
a
hear
problem.
one.
Let's hear one.
You do have a problem.
I did have a problem,
Hmm.
but within that problem, I was always wanting to be a father and a husband. But so in terms of laying game, all right, I spent a lot of time at parties. I spent a lot of time in the in concert venues and things of that nature because of where I played, who I played with, my interest in music as a musician, blah blah blah. So depending on where I was, actually would depend how I lay game down. I'll put it that way, laying game, hitting on girls, flirting with girls. So if I was at a party or something like that, I would walk up to the girl and would say, hey, I got some weed. You want to come over here?
Wow.
Really easy, depending on the girl, because I hung around with degenerates, and amongst degenerates were the harlots. And so depending on how much that harlot had been around town, depended on whether or not I decided if I'm going to hit on you. Because quite frankly, I didn't want to get a venereal disease because that was actually something I had to worry
Goes
about back in the day.
car analogy. Because if it's got a lot of miles on it, you don't want it.
Correct, unless you're drunk, which was one of the other problems that you
Oh,
had.
boy.
But anyway, so it would depend on where it is. If I was actually going for the dating, okay, as opposed to sleeping around, which we'll get to in a minute, but if I was actually going for the dating category, it wouldn't be like, hey, I got some weed here. I'd walk up and say, hey, I've seen you around. I'd start laying game and just talking and flirting and all that. If it was an actual date, I would ask them out. First of all, I would ask them somewhere public. I wouldn't take them out to dinner. I wouldn't do that. I'd make it so like, all right, does this have the legs for a private dinner? Does this have the legs
Like
for something like that?
amusement park
No,
or
like I mean,
stroll in the
going
park
to
or-
the park. Yeah, going to the
Okay.
park. We go somewhere, maybe the beach, because I was living in New York. So I go, hey, you want to go to Morgan Beach? Morgan Beach was a very famous beach. It's still there. Big park. You can walk around. It could be very romantic or it could be very platonic, depending on the conversation. And so I'd take them there. We get to know each other, all that stuff. And if it had the legs, then I would say, hey, let's go for a second date. It'd be like, hey, let's go to dinner or let's go to a movie or let's go somewhere where we can have a little bit more privacy, things like that, where it could get a little bit more intimate and I can lay down the more romantic game, so to speak. But every single time it would always start with, and this is okay. There's nothing wrong with this. It always start and going back to the analogy, with attraction. That's not necessarily a mistake to approach somebody, whether Christian or not Christian. It starts with attraction. To execute actually dating somebody, whether Christian or non-Christian, it's a mistake to just go on attraction.
Right.
Because I can tell you right now, I've had a lot of girlfriends. I didn't sleep with every single girlfriend I had before I was a Christian. But the reality is there was a lot of attractive females who were absolutely out of their minds. And you learn that through conversation. You learn that through time. Sorry, it is what it is.
That's point number one.
Let's go on point number one here.
A dumb decision defective daters make, or a defective decision dumb daters make, is focusing only on the features and not doing what you're saying.
Yes.
Not getting to know the inner workings.
But there is some guilt from Christians where it's like, oh, I'm attracted to her. It's like, God gave you eyes. It's not wrong to be attracted to somebody. It's letting your mind run amok and go with lust.
Lust not after her beauty.
Correct. But it's a whole nother ballgame to go, wow, you are one fine looking woman.
Yes.
I mean, I remember here, I'll get my brownie points in right now.
Okay.
I remember, and this is after I was a Christian, I remember I was on a missionary base with over 2,000 people, half of those being Koreans, the other half being from all different corners of the ends of the earth. And I remember in the food line, you had a big old food line, you had all these like gazebos and picnic tables, and that was lunch every day. It was when I was in Bible school. And I remember seeing, I had not contacted her, had not talked to her. I remember seeing my wife walking past the food line to get to the end of the line.
Before she was your wife.
Before I even knew her. And she stood out to me. I said, oh my, that is a very beautiful woman. I remember thinking that. Like, I wasn't like, oh yeah, she's hot. I was all about her beauty.
Right.
But she captivated me. And so when I met her later, I was a little bit intimidated. I'm like, oh my, such a beautiful woman. I get to talk to her. And this was when I was a Christian. But she caught my eye before I knew her. Out of 2,000 plus people, and there was a lot of different countries and ethnicities represented. She caught my eye.
See, and my wife caught my eye while she's sitting in a passenger seat of a car, passing me by with me in the other car, and I saw her, and that was
And let's not bypass the fact that it was a car. Cars could be captivating in themselves.
Well, that car was, but I went from the car to discuss because it was Roger. And then back to
all I could see is you doing this.
Euphoria.
Woman, car. Women, car.
No,
okay,
it was
woman.
like car, Roger, her.
But, okay, so going back to it. So, yes, there's nothing wrong with attraction.
No,
there's
but
nothing
don't
wrong with attraction.
don't make your decision just on the features.
Yes, because there are, okay, this just goes for people in general. Before you're a Christian, after you're a Christian, there are a lot of people who are just drop dead attractive. Men who are handsome, women who are beautiful, and then they open their mouth. And all of a sudden they went from, let's say, a 10 out of 10 scale to you just dropped down to a 2 because of what's coming out of your face. Yep. It's disgusting how you're talking. It's disturbing how you're talking. It's amazing the level of self-control you showed and the filter you have with your mouth because of your talking. There are guys who are not that great looking. There are some women who are not that great looking because we're talking. This is just a fact. This is truth. And then they talk, and oh my goodness, they went from whatever on the scale that they went up 5 points because the way that they're talking, they're just graceful, they're kind, they're loving,
their character,
intelligent,
right?
All that. And because the mouth and what comes out of it reveals what's inside. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. It reveals what's in the heart. So, so attraction, yes, attraction is important. But again, going back to the dating pool, and you know we have to get back on track here because the whole thing was dating. Yeah, the whole thing was dating in this day and age. Let's hit that real quick. What does dating look like in this day and age?
So you're asking the wrong guy. I haven't dated in like 52 years.
What is your understanding of today's day and age? Because you're talking from a standpoint. Hold on. You're talking from a standpoint of a 70-year-old male. Okay, in 2024.
Am I 70?
Yes. 2024, what is dating, your understanding of dating from the non-Christian perspective and the Christian perspective look like today?
Well, in my opinion, I see a lot of people who are single. Let's just cover a single Christian woman with children.
Okay, we're in the Christian realm now.
Tough spot. Because
one of the toughest.
One of the toughest. There's a lot of guys, single guys, that don't want to get married and all of a sudden have 1, 2, 3, 4 children, all of a sudden. But sometimes that Christian woman is so desperate for companionship, so desperate for a father for their kids, right? They will literally trample hurdles that were there to stop them.
Filter systems.
Right. They'll trample red flags in order to get the marriage in hopes that, it'll work out. That's wrong. That's bad. I've seen most of those that I've seen have never worked out.
So what is your understanding? Because I'm going to speak towards the non-Christian dating scene nowadays.
Okay.
And then I'm going to kind of comment on that. But what is your understanding of how non-Christians date today? What is your understanding of how they date? Because no one's walking up to a car anymore.
How they date or how they should date?
How they date. What is your understanding of how non-Christians date right now today?
Oh, non-Christians.
Yes. I want to know what because you're speaking to, I want to know what they think.
Pretty much they dated the same way when I was a non-Christian.
So no. When I say dated, I don't mean like, okay, we're together now. I mean like getting into that dating pool. Like you saw people, you approach people. That's not necessarily what happens today.
A lot of it depends on your character. I'm kind of outgoing. I'm not shy in a lot of areas.
So how do you think people are dating today? It's like finding each other.
Texting, social media.
You ever heard of Bumble?
Who?
Bumble?
I heard of Rumble.
Okay, but haven't heard of Bumble.
No.
Okay. Have you heard of Tinder?
Tinder, yes, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
But I've heard of it.
So let me here for all of you.
See, you're
65
asking the
plus.
wrong
No,
guy.
but that's the whole thing I want. It's not I'm asking them. I'm asking the right guy because there's a lot of people who are 65, 60, 70, 50 plus. Okay. Actually, there are people that could be 30, 38, 39 who have absolutely no idea of how the dating pool works nowadays. And it's very important because they're cultivating it in our children. It's really simple. 2D relationships, 2D interactions. 2D, they're trying people on before they get them. Bumble is it's kind of a split between Tinder and like one of those Match.com deals. Okay. It's a split because if you want to find a one-night stand, you're going to find it on Bumble, but you're also trying to match up with somebody and you're trying to see, okay, should we go on a date? Tinder is just straight hooking up. It's basically a way for you to go, I'm feeling frisky. I want to find me a female or a male tonight. And you can literally go on Tinder and find a female or a male and find a one-night stand in your area. It makes whoring yourself around really convenient. It also makes it to where you don't have to actually have a skill set or social contact with this person prior to possibly going on a date with them, which really takes out a lot of the interaction that you have with other humans, like pretty seriously. And it's cultivated in our kids in other things like Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok because, well, maybe not so much TikTok. TikTok kind of cultivates it, but it makes it to where the kids can't interact. And I've touched on this before where they don't know how to interact with people they find attractive, people they want to flirt with, people. And I mean, like, I'm talking youth. I'm talking teenagers.
Basically, they're like animals. They go by instinct.
No, they're social idiots. A lot of the dating pool nowadays also makes it social idiocracy where you can't even judge somebody based on, because you want to judge somebody based on what they're saying. But you're judging someone based on like a scorecard. It's like if you have a baseball card, you could judge how good a player that is because they have this, and this on their roster.
Their stats.
Yeah, they have, and that's what you're doing. You're looking at stats. You might have an interaction with them over the phone, but that's it. But that's what we have today in the dating pool. That's how a lot of people find flirt.
So what would you challenge those people? Let's get to an answer rather than this
for the non-Christian. Okay, because we're not talking Christians right now.
Either of them.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess we can go with either of them. My challenge would be instead of making it the main aspect of your interaction digital. Don't make the main aspect of your interaction digital. Use the technology to simply set something up with that person where you can interact with them over a length of time, face to face.
Right.
Because there's people that I've talked to that have said, I've been in a relationship for 2 weeks and barely have talked to them.
So
face to
the
face.
second thing, defective decisions dumb daters make would be what you just said.
Digital interaction being the
interaction.
predominant way of interacting with
And
a
trying to get to
potential
know
spouse.
them. Right.
It's a dumb thing to do. Utilize it. Don't make it predominant. Big difference. And there are Christians that do that too.
Yep.
It's like, oh yeah, we've been talking for days. Where? Oh, texting. Oh, doing little video. You're not really interacting.
I've actually heard, I can't say I've known, although I think I know somebody who socially dated or dated over social media for like months. And said, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend up in Minnesota. And
I just remembered I saw this thing.
what?
Yeah, I think it was someone on Dr. Phil. And she believed wholeheartedly she was married to Tyler Perry and was having a romantic relationship with Tyler Perry, the famous actor. And it was all through media. And she was so convinced of it that her daughters brought her on television on Dr. Phil to basically tell her someone's catfishing you. You're not married or in a relationship with Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry's over here. He lives over here with his family and his wife and all that stuff. And you're saying that he has a romantic relationship with you in secret because it's all digital. It was all digital, the whole relationship. And we're talking
very,
years.
Disturbing.
Yes, but that's what a lot of people do. They get fished because people trust media too much and they trust the things behind social media regarding dating. Now, going into another realm here, and I want you to speak towards this, another decision that people make with how to date, what would you call it? Please say the whole title. Defective
decisions dumb daters make.
Okay, another one is that you have common interests and you solely based your relationship on common interests. What would be the danger in that?
Bored. You'd be bored. You get bored easily. You don't want opposites attract is the old analogy, right? And that's good sometimes because then you complement each other in your differences. See, which I had to learn that. When I was first married, I wanted my wife to agree with everything I liked. And so, and she was kind of, excuse me, at the beginning, she would kind of just give into that.
She'd be complicit or agreeable.
Until finally one day I said, hey, what do you think of these, let's just go curtains? She goes, no, I don't like them. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
I do know this story, actually.
Oh, yeah. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, well, you asked me. I'm just telling you I don't like them. Well, that's like the first time she ever did that. Because typically she would be, like you say, be complacent and say, oh, yeah, if you like them, I like them.
I'll say this, even before I was a Christian, there was a girl, she turned out to be psychotic, but that was a lot of my,
Not gonna say anything.
My dating history is a mishmash of human garbage and psychos. That's just really my dating history. For some reason, I was attracted to psychotic women. This one, I remember I dated. Here you go. You ready? Again, pre-Christ. Please judge all you want.
BC,
Pre-Christ.
before Christ.
I remember there was a girl, I dated her 3 different times, and this was in high school. And the first time I dated her for like a month and a half, second time around a month, third time, I think I lasted 3 months. No, the first time was 3 months. But I remember every time I would get with her, it was like, do I like you? Do I not like you? And I always be like, I like you today. And then the next day I'd be like, I don't like you, because she was so agreeable, it drove me crazy. It was like I could have told her to make me a sandwich. She would have made me a sandwich. I could have told her, oh, go do this. She would do it. It just so agreeable with everything. It drove me nuts.
See, right now there's some guys going, yeah, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is it's going to drive you crazy, because then you have a slave and a clone of whatever you're making is, and that's really unexciting. You want someone with a brain. You want someone who's going to challenge you. You want someone who's going to compliment you. You want someone who's going to be a helpmate, not a slave. And so, yeah, I broke up with her like 3 different times because I was like, you need to have a personality. There was no personality there because her personality was whatever I wanted it to be.
All right, let's switch gears.
Go ahead.
Because the world's going to do, the people that don't know Christ are going to date however they want. They're going to be all sensual and all of that. And that's why there's some people are on their 3rd, 4th, 5th wife. Anyway, ridiculous. Or third, fourth,
Or have them
fifth
all together if you
girlfriend.
live in Utah.
So I'm a Christian guy. Okay, let's just say
I'm a Christian
I'm
guy.
a young Christian
I like
guy.
Tommy Bahama shirts.
I'm a
and
young Christian guy.
I've watched Top Gun
And
7 times.
at least because I'm a man.
Have you
I'm
seen
a-
those dating videos from the 80s? Those are so good.
No.
Oh my gosh. I got to show you after this. They're so good. They're so funny. And it's like that. It's like, I've watched Top Gun over 8 times. Some guys are like, I like playing D&D often. Like, they're just really bad dating videos.
So
I'll show you.
They make those
Oh,
so
yeah.
people be attracted to them.
Yeah, like the dating, what were they? The dating, in the 80s, they were like dating networks. It was like you send in you make a tape, you send it in, and then some lady who's looking for a guy will see your tape and want to actually date you.
I'm gonna
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question.
Sorry.
Do you know anybody
Yes.
that found their mate and married them
One.
through a dating?
One.
Give me some names. Give me some names of the dating.
Danny, and Aaron are the
Right.
only ones
That's
that I know.
one, but there's another one I know. I know actually two that met through a social media
Yep.
platform.
Oh, they met through a dating website.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
that's I only know one.
And I think theirs was gosh, what was
It's
the
like
one that-
Match.com
what was the
or
one that-
eHarmony or
I think
some
it was
crap.
Match. eHarmony was like the big one that first came
That's
out.
the only one I know.
There's eHarmony. What you just said, Match.com.
No, that's the only couple that I know that
Oh.
got married, stayed married, and actually had similar faith, and
So,
where they can maintain
let's say
faith
I'm
as
a
a
young
couple.
Christian man. I mean, well, let me give some of my advices to a young Christian man. You're a young Christian man. Thankfully, you like girls, the opposite sex, and you eventually have it in your heart.
For clarification,
In your heart to marry someday and to have children and have a family and all of that. Okay, so let me just speak to that young Christian man right now. It's okay to, I would advise you don't get in any serious relationship, especially in high school. Even if you think that, well, that's the one I'm going to marry. I would say wait until at least your last year of college to really pursue a member of the opposite sex that you really believe you want to marry. Because going through school, I mean, there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of things that happen in high school and college that you don't need the extra, I'm going to call it a burden, even though it's love, but I'm going to call it a burden. You don't need that extra burden of having to care and having to adopt that person's concerns and hurts and failures and victories and all of that until you really have the time to focus on. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I'm going to speak towards that because I say this in youth group when I do preach on sex or marriage in youth group. I say it all the time. I say, Pastor Mike has yet to be proven wrong. Because really what it is any single time there's been two people interested in each other in youth group, I've always said, first thing, I always say, don't cross the physical barrier because there's no going back from that. You'll go down the rabbit hole. And I just, I warn them. I say, if you are going to have to date, I said, do it right. My prescription is, and I say have to,
Yeah.
like, oh, we can't help it. My prescription is always never be alone. My prescription is always don't Netflix and chill, which is the equivalent of let's go in my basement and watch a movie so that it's dark and I can get what I need to underneath the blankets. So I say never do that. When you go on dates, try to do it with friends, things like that. Be in a friend group. Don't do the physical contact thing. Try not to kiss. Try not to do those things because it arouses passion, and we'll get into that at some point, maybe.
Maybe not. It's getting late.
Yeah, I know. But the whole point is, I also say don't emotionally invest. Like find out the important things. If there's something there, okay, then just maintain friendship until the appropriate time. Because there is a degree where people need to learn to deal with rejection, but at the same time, I've yet to be proven on that because no matter what, seemingly every time two young people start to date, and I'm talking teenagers, they get either too emotionally invested where there's no physical stuff, or they get they cross that physical barrier where then immediately there's the emotional and spiritual investment, and it literally digresses them into sin, to where their minds are not focused on anything regarding God first and foremost. And then you bring in schooling, you bring in a job, you bring in all that. They're ensconced because they're ensconced in the would-be possible relationship. And in Nebraska specifically, it seems to be that a lot of people, most people from Nebraska, I'm going to say 90%, if they start dating in teenage years, they immediately go to, this could be my wife or husband. Because so many people in Nebraska marry at 18, 19, 20, 21, very young.
I did.
Yeah, and that's a cultural thing, because in my land of New York, you don't get married until you have a career after college and you're like 30. Like that, seemingly late 20s to 30s.
I'm not saying, I mean, now we would have waited. We didn't wait. We didn't have to get married. We just did. But we both came from such dysfunctional families. And
I got married by Nebraska rules. I got married as an old man at 24.
Yes.
And but for me, that's young, according to my culture.
Yeah, we got married just a few months after we turned 18.
So yeah, that whole thing with the emotional investment, the spiritual investment, it'll take you down a route you don't want to go. So what would you call that whole thing that you just talked about? What's a defective decision that daters make in the Christian realm that they shouldn't make here?
Well, I think you just said it. Number one, they cross a line and they get physically involved, which, sad to say, happens more than it should. Well, it should never happen with Christian people. I mean, I do know a few Christian people that waited until they were married to express themselves physically to each other. I know one couple who didn't even kiss. Now, before they were heathens, then they got saved. I mean, they didn't know each other as heathens. They were heathens and, probably did everything heathens do. And then they gave their life to Christ and committed themselves to Christ to not even kiss anybody until their wedding day. And then they ran into each other and they both had that same commitment. And so they didn't even kiss until their wedding day, which is if people ask you, why does the preacher on your wedding day, why does the minister say you may now kiss the bride? The reason that statement is there is because up until then, you've expressed yourself intellectually with each other. You've expressed yourself spiritually with each other. You've expressed yourself socially with each other. But now,
if it was done right, go ahead.
If it was done right. Now, under the covenant of marriage, the first covenant God gave man, male and female, under the covenant of marriage now, that minister, under the authority of God, is now giving you permission to express yourself physically, which is the way God intended.
I want to give two say the statement. I can't say it. You've memorized it. Ed Young, go. What is it?
Defective decisions dumb daters make.
I want to give two.
Okay.
This is for Christians.
Okay.
The first one, going in line with what you said. Christians think that they're going to be a wildcat in bed right after they get married. That is such a false expectation. You have been literally resisting sex up until the point of marriage. And all of a sudden, now you're supposed to flip the switch and go, oh, sex is good now. There's a resistance to that in your spirit and in your mind, though you're going to do it. Because I'm sorry, I don't know any groom who said we're not going to do it because it's sinful on their wedding night.
Not sinful.
But the whole thing is, there is a poor decision that a lot of Christians make, and this is something that I do encourage when I premarital counsel. You can create intimacy so that, because a lot of Christians believe that your sexual desire, all of a sudden, it's like, it's a light switch. Okay, now we're married. Let me turn it on. Where you've literally said everything you've done everything you could do to prevent it from happening.
Right.
Where actually, if you treat it appropriately, there's ways you could do non-sexual, non-physical intimacy to build that intimacy so that it's kind of like a dimmer switch. As you're building towards your wedding day, you're slowly turning the light switch on so that when it is your wedding day, you've created a level of intimacy in other ways, non-physical, so that now the physical is the crown of the intimacy you've already built with them during the time that you're engaged. There's a way to do that because I mean, that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen Christians make is, okay, I've resisted sin this long. Now it's not sin. And I expect it to be amazing, where it's like, in all likelihood, it's not going to be amazing in the sense of you're a Hellcat in the sheets. No, you're having vulnerability on your wedding night. You also hopefully haven't had sex. And hopefully if you've had sex before you're a Christian, but you've now abstained from sex, you've been celibate for X amount of time.
Right.
There's things that will happen, physical things, where, you know what? It may not be the standard, typical mindset of, oh yeah, we had relations all night long. I don't think so.
May not be the 4th of July night.
There you go. Thank you. So that's one mistake. Anything to speak on towards that? Because,
No.
I mean, you
said
premarital
enough.
counsel. I said more than enough.
Go to the second one.
The second one is this.
Gotta end this.
No, I know. But this is an interesting topic.
It is. Very interesting.
The other one, we talked about common interests. That's a mistake to just base on common interests. The other thing that I would say is don't base getting into a relationship, dating, on similarities, not common interests, but similarities. Like, oh, I like this band. Oh, I like this music. Oh, I like this church. Oh, I like this preacher. Oh, I like this. I like this. All the things you both like, not just common interests, but all the things that you like, that doesn't really mean anything. In the end, that doesn't mean anything if you both like the same music, if you both like similar movies, if you both like, that's really just surface level crap. If you both like the same candidate, if you both like the same politics, that is important. But where do you stand? Important. But here's the thing. Where do you stand on similarities in the Word of God? Where do you stand on, do we agree in things in the Word of God? Because if I believe in the power of the Holy Ghost being for today, and my future wife does not, or my future, the person I'm dating does not, I probably shouldn't get into that relationship because we will be at odds with our doctrine and our belief system.
And that will filter into every other aspect.
Correct. And the only way that stuff is revealed, it's not the common interest that gets you into a relationship. It's not the similarities that get you in a relationship. It's time. It's time invested where you have these conversations and the things that are vital to the foundations of your life, how you raise children, where does life begin, the doctrine of the Word of God, truth and morality. Abortion. These are things that only can come out with time. That's the only way.
And that's why we encourage people, if you're a Christian, to go through pre-engagement counseling. It's the same thing as premarital counseling, only you're going through it before you get engaged, because too many people have gotten engaged, bought the ring, set a date, sent out invitations, and then go through pre-marriage counseling only to find out there was some flags there and they should either cancel it or postpone it, but they won't because of the embarrassment, because they've set so they go ahead and go through the wedding and they get married, and now they're having trouble. Now they're having problems.
And that's happened more often than not. And it's important to bring in wise counsel who are looking outside of your relationship, because you're just looking through love eyes and you're going, oh, we talked about this and this and this and this. And then someone comes in and goes, but I've been married for, 5 plus, 10 plus, 15, 20, 30, 40. Have you thought about this?
I mean, I know somebody who's been married for decades, and out of their own mouth.
That's 10 years and more.
Out of their own mouth is, my marriage has been hell since my wedding day. Yeah. So pre-engagement counseling.
Africans don't even do that, according to Preacher Jay, our friend.
That's what?
They don't even do that. They go, you're going to marry somebody? We're getting married. We're getting married on this day. There's no pre-engagement counseling.
There didn't used to be.
But here's the thing. You get to know them first, and then you just go, we're getting married. Then you get married.
Yeah.
You go through that process of time that I just talked about. You bring in counseling. Wise elders, wise counsel before that. And then it's like, okay, I know. And I've sought, I agree with you with pre-engagement, but there's some places where it's like they don't label it, they just do it. They do the counseling. They do the, hey, let's talk about this. They do the, I got to know you. I asked the hard questions. They do all that.
And if you're mature enough, you can do that. You don't even need counseling.
And that's the key right there.
That's the key. Anyway, we got to lock this up because I have an appointment.
With
Someone who just had a baby.
Oh.
Yes, going to go give them a card and a gift. And
I thought you were going to get more tailor-made Tommy Bahama shirts.
this is not tailor-made. I just filled it out.
You know what? I don't know if that's a fat joke or if I'm getting buff joke.
Oh, speaking of fat jokes.
Where's this going to go considering we're talking about dating?
Somebody, and it was a woman, I will not say her name.
Oh, boy.
But, well, let me just bring it up without revealing the person. I thought it was hilarious. It's nice when you can make fun of yourself, right? Or joke around when, okay, this person put on social media the other day. Don't worry, I'm looking. It's down quite a ways because we're coming up on 4th of July, and there's a lot of 4th of July stuff.
Yes, and happy Independence Day for all Americans. All Americans. This is not... Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. For all Americans, happy Independence Day tomorrow. Enjoy. Don't blow off your hands, fingers, toes, nose. Singeing eyebrows is okay, though, because that's hilarious.
Please do not invite me to outside events. It's hot, and I'm fat, and there are bugs.
You know, I'm not fat, and I still feel that way.
Well, I thought it was hilarious.
It is.
Anyway, this is Pastor Mike. Signing off from my half of the show anyway and giving it over to Pastor Michael.
Yes.
It'll take us home.
And this is Pastor Michael. Thank you for tuning in. I know we kind of jumped all over the place, but hopefully you got something out of this. If you are looking to date somebody, standard should always be the word. If you are a Christian, the standard should always be the word of God and the character that that person shows and reflects the word of God and their faith in how they treat you and how they treat their friends, their parents, and all other people that they interact with in front of you. So,
and if you're a guy, you're looking for a godly woman, read Proverbs 31.
Yes, not... I want to quote Jezebel and Kings, but I can't think of it right now. Not 1 Kings 19.
If you're a Christian woman looking for a man of God.
A man. You're looking for a man
of God, please read of some of the men of God in the Bible.
There's a lot of men. Not Samson. That's not a man. I don't know why I'm putting on that, but whatever. Anyway, yes. So please subscribe to Two Mics with Two Mics. Share it. If you have a descriptive word, today's word comes from Alyssa W. Thank you, Alyssa W. If you have a word or would like to share or seeking some dating advice of some kind, please email asktwomikes@gmail.com. Ask2mics@gmail.com. We love you.
We love you. Care about you.
Don't be a moron when you date, please. Bumble ain't the way to do it. Farmers only. Farmers only. Still not the way to do it, but still hilarious. Didn't know about that until I got to Nebraska.
Farmers
You never heard that?
only.
Oh my gosh. Look up a commercial. If you look up a commercial, if you're watching this, Farmers Only is essentially the eHarmonyMatch.com for farmers. All their commercials are sheer gold. They're really funny to me.
So if you're a woman, you're going to marry a farmer. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if you're a farmer or daughter of farmers and you want to, it's like Laura Ingalls hooking up with some other guy on the prairie that you go to farmersonly.com apparently.
We love you.
Bye.